The Houston Astros have been one of the most successful teams of the last decade, but they can't seem to beat the Cincinnati Reds. We'll talk about that and more on this episode of First Pitch. Yes, welcome on into First Pitch for Friday, September 6th. I'm Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. He's Christian Rauh. You can follow him on Twitter at Christian S. Rauh, R-A-U-H. And Christian, just 9 games on the slate on Thursday night, but some really interesting results came out of this. I want to start off with the Houston Astros. They drop a heartbreaker to the Cincinnati Reds, 1-0. You get 6 scoreless innings out of Hunter Brown. Rhett Lauder of the Reds in his second career start goes one better and does 6 1/3 scoreless innings. Both guys give up 4 hits. Hunter Brown was a little more efficient, 1 walk to 6 strikeouts. Lauder had 4 walks to 3 strikeouts. But this goes to the bullpen. Ty France hits a home run in the 7th inning that ends up being the winning run, the only run scored in this game. And here's what's wild to me. This is now 9 consecutive losses from by the Astros to the Cincinnati Reds. They were swept this year. They were swept last year. Before that, the last time they played was 2019. They got swept then too. The last time the Astros beat the Cincinnati Reds was June 19th, 2016. Brandon Phillips was the second baseman for Cincinnati. They had Billy Hamilton in center field, while George Springer led off for the Astros. If that kind of tells you how long it's been since the Astros found a way to beat the Cincinnati Reds. When is the last time you've seen some sort of inexplicable dominance like this in the game of baseball?
I don't think we can compare the stat we had last week with the St. Louis Cardinals and the New York Yankees, right? Because they only played like one series over a 60-year span, although that stat line was still really crazy. This one's wild because when you think of the Houston Astros over the last decade, you think of just pure dominance. I mean,
they've been one of the most. Yeah, they've won like almost the most games in baseball in that span, and obviously at least 2 World Series and been to multiple and all of that.
Yeah, how many times have we talked about them going to, like you mentioned, multiple ALCSs? But back then, 2016, I don't have that record in front of me, but that might be one of their last losing seasons or one of their first winning seasons. I can't remember. But regardless, before they had their dominance, they were a really bad team. And then that's when they finally had their wins against the Reds. Insane that they have not won a game since 2016. Now, there hasn't been a series they don't play every year. We got to keep that in mind, that these streaks like this aren't going to happen anymore because we're now going to be playing every team every year. You might not play them at home every year, but you're going to be playing them at least 2 games every season, which I'm still not sure how I feel about yet. We'll get to that, I guess, at some other time. But regardless, insane stat. Hunter Brown looks really good, by the way. And I've kind of mentioned this a few times over the past couple weeks, talking about Aaron Getty and talking about Hunter Brown. That's a great core to have, a great young core to have for the Astros moving up. And there's been a lot of talks about, can this pitching staff hold up, moving into the postseason with Verlander just returning, with Kikuchi coming over the trade deadline. Aaron Getty had a rough start the other day. Hunter Brown might be one of those guys that we're not talking about enough because he had a rough start to the beginning of the season. So people kind of wrote him off. He's going right back into that conversation of being one of those dudes that are probably going to be at the top of the rotation of this Astros organization for a very long time, Lindsay.
Yeah. That was an 84-78 season for the Astros in 2016. That was the first, that was the second winning season. They went 86-76 the year before, but that is obviously the year before 2017 where they won the World Series, but also, had that banging on trash cans, sign stealing scandal there. But they've made 7 consecutive playoff runs since that 2016 season. Hunter Brown, like, they needed this, right? This is something where you have questions about Justin Verlander. You feel good for the most part about Spencer Arrighetti, although granted that blow up was an awful blow up, right? And of course, I was starting him in redraft in the first round of the playoffs, and had to fight my way back to fix my to kind of fix my ERA from that. But I still have faith that this Astros team can absolutely make a run. And then, like, to your point, the core of pitching, when you look at the guys they still have, the guys who are injured, who are going to be coming back from injury, whether it's Jose Urquidy, just Christian Javier, all these different guys that they have that are going to be part of that going forward. You feel good about the long-term viability of this team. I do think you've got questions about if you have to, or if you can't re-sign Alex Bregman, as in, he is a Boris client. He is the number one third baseman on the market now that Matt Chapman has re-signed with the Giants, because there's not really an easy replacement for him at third base in this farm system. It's just kind of one of the issues there. So you're kind of curious what they're going to do, but yeah, no, I feel good about Houston. On your note of the schedule real quick, I like the fact that you get to see every significant major leaguer every year. I don't like the fact that when you play a team twice instead of once, it's always in like back-to-back weeks. I've said this before on different podcasts and radio hits and all kinds of different places. I hate the concept of a starting pitcher could make 2 consecutive starts and they could be against the same team. I just think that that's a competitive disadvantage to the pitcher, and that makes it really tough. And if the point of the balanced schedule is to get to see every team and see some of these stars of the game, see your Mike Trouts, see your all that stuff, then if a guy goes on the 10-day IL right before the first of those 2 series, he may be out the entire for both of those series. It feels like put him in different months. Like, yes, you'll go out to San Diego. The next month, San Diego will come to you. It doesn't have to be the next week. And I just feel like that's where MLB kind of misses with the balanced schedule, is how closely they pack in some of these matchups.
No, that's a really good point. And, I guess the biggest one that people always like to talk about is you get to see Mike Trout in Philadelphia every other year. And that's a huge deal. You get a chance to see Mike Trout when healthy in all these different cities every other year that you wouldn't have saw from National League teams over the last couple seasons. This one more thing to close the book on Hunter Brown here. In August, 1.45 ERA. And then he obviously had a scoreless outing to start September here yesterday. That's a heck of a way to go into August, go into September, and get ready for the postseason. If we're talking right now with, the shaky start of Aaron Getty, with Kikuchi obviously doing great things, Verlander, he's known to being obviously an amazing pitcher. Mm-hmm. Would you consider Hunter Brown your number 3 in the postseason?
I think you kind of have to at this point. Like, it's just, I think I trust him more than Arrighetti, if that makes sense, because I do think when Hunter Brown has a blow up, because every pitcher has a blow up. When when Brown has a blow up, it might not be as bad as Arrighetti's blow up, right? And I think the longer track record in the majors, he's pitched in the postseason before. I think Brown's your number 3 and Arrighetti's behind him.
Yeah, that's what I think so too. The crazy thing is we're talking all this great things about the Astros and getting them ready for the postseason. They're on a 3-game losing streak, which is, obviously it's helping them out that they had a great run just the last couple weeks ago, and they've got a pretty decent lead already on the Mariners, which is wild because 2 months ago we're talking about them down 10 games from the American League West, but they're getting Kyle Tucker back. I mean, how interesting is that going to be that we're finally seeing Kyle Tucker come back? Is he coming back? Is it still him? Is it still Kyle Tucker? Are
they actually getting Kyle Tucker back? The quote was that they are, quote, very hopeful, end quote, that they get him back on Friday. The shin contusion, which turned into a shin fracture, they finally admitted that's what it was. It feels like that's the final piece in the coffin on the AL West. The Mariners obviously are not in prime position to make the point. They're 4.5 games back, right? But it feels like that's probably the final straw in just locking up the West and getting into postseason positioning, is getting Kyle Tucker back. Again, if he does, and I do think the way this works, you have time to ease him back into the lineup. You don't have to have him play every day. You could even throw Yordan in left in a home game and let Tucker DH here and there. I know Yordan's range isn't great, but again, that short porch in left may help a little bit. I think it's the right time to bring him back because you have a couple weeks for him to get back into form before the postseason starts. We see so many situations where a dude rushes back and then doesn't hit for 2 or 3 weeks. And it's like, in retrospect, maybe we should have just let him wait for 2 more weeks before he came back. And I think this is the right time to do it. They have the lead where they can go and let him play himself back into form.
I feel like he has been out forever. And it's obviously it's because we haven't heard a lot of updates on him. But I'm surprised when I went and looked at his stats that he already played 60 games this year. Like I did not know it was that many. I didn't know he played already 60 games. Um, but I do remember that when he was playing, he was hot, and the stats really show that as well. He already had 19 home runs in those first 60 games with a 979 OPS. So if he brings back even just remotely any of that production back to this Houston Astros team, you're right. They put the nail in the coffin. It's over.
Wait, you said 19 home runs in 60 games?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Math top of my head. I mean, that's over a 40 homer pace. Wild.
Yeah, 19
okay.
home runs, 40 RBIs in just 60 games so far in 2024.
Golly, I forgot how good Kyle Tucker was this season because, like you said, he's been gone all year. All right, a guy who had been here and there all year, but played an instrumental part yesterday in the Tigers versus Padres matchup is Parker Meadows. Padres are up in the 9th inning. They've got Robert Suarez on the mound, who has been one of the, the better relievers in all of baseball. Parker Meadows comes to the plate, bases loaded, 2 outs, 2 strikes, and he does this.
2. In the air, left field side, Profar back, at the track, at the wall. Oh my goodness! Parker Meadows did it! That ball kept on flying, and the Tigers, like we've said all season long, are not done.
The great Jason Benetti. Oh, so good.
Yeah.
So
that was a very good call.
Very good call. Goes from a 3-0 deficit to a 4-3 lead. That ends up being the final margin. Tigers win 4-3 over the Padres. Tigers 4th in the AL Central, 71-70. I feel like this is despite trading Jack Flaherty away, this is a successful year for the Tigers. And I have to ask, Casey Mize goes out there, 5 1/3 innings, 3 runs. Not a quality start, but still respectable, right? From former number 1 overall pick. You go out there, bullpen gives you 3 2/3 scoreless innings against a dangerous team in the San Diego Padres, and they're able to come back and do something like this. Do you see a path to the Tigers being competitive in the division next year?
Yeah, I think you have to say that. And I think we've been waiting on that for quite some time. Ever since Hinch went over there to become the manager, ever since they, added the players like Javi Baez and things like that. I think the idea of the Tigers being competitive has been around for a couple years now. I have had the hardest time trying to predict the AL Central for the past couple seasons, and I think the Tigers are the main culprit for that because you think they're going to be good. You look at the team, you think they're going to be a good team, and I think now you're finally starting to see it. What's crazy is that they haven't really been in any kind of playoff talks until after the trade deadline this year, when they did move one of their aces, Jack Flaherty, to the Dodgers. Them keeping Scubal's been huge. He's been absolutely amazing. But there's a possibility that might only see them be competitive in 2025, Lindsay. There's still a shot that they could make the postseason. 5 games is a lot, don't get me wrong, but those 5 games are catching up to 2 of their other teams in their division. We're talking right now, and here, stop me if you've heard this before, because I don't know if you're going to be able to stop me. Don't stop me now. But there are 4 teams in contention for the playoffs that are in the American League Central. Like, when is the last time we've ever been able to say that? I don't think ever.
Yeah, to your point, the Guardians leading the division at 80-60. The Twins have the second wildcard spot at 76-64. They're half a game up on the Royals, 76-65. And then the first team out in the American League are these Tigers, 71-70, 5 games back. And this is a great little segue here into the next point I wanted to make, the Braves dropped their series finale to the Colorado Rockies. They win the series 2-1, but with the loss and the Mets not losing because they were off on Thursday, now the Braves and Mets are tied for the final wild card spot in the National League. They are also tied against one another, 5-5. So the next tiebreaker would be intra-divisional record, which goes to the Mets. But these two teams have another series, a 3-game series at the end of the season. The next to last series for both teams is versus one another. So that first tiebreaker will get broken. But here's the big observation out of this. Of the 12 potential playoff spots that you have, three division winners in each league, 3 wild cards in each league, 11 of those 12 spots are filled by a team that, according to Fangraphs, has an 82% chance or better of making the postseason. We don't quite know where each team is going to seed. You've got a question about who's going to win the American League East between the Yankees and the Orioles. Orioles are up by a half game. You're not quite sure if the Guardians can hold off the Twins and Royals and what order the Twins and Royals are going to finish in. Again, they're second and third. But outside of that, you have a pretty good chance at 11 of these 12 teams who are in it right now still being in it when the postseason starts. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Or is this just kind of fluky and we shouldn't worry about it?
I'm going to say 2 things here. I'm going to say that, one, this is just how the cards laid down for us this season, especially.
You mean the Cardinals being bad? How the Cardinals were bad?
I mean, I guess that's the whole thing. Cards laying down, yes. But I'm also talking about the physical playing cards in this one, with my good one, by the way. But what I'm talking about is that with all this league parity we've had this season, this is not surprising that we are having, most of these playoff teams already figured out, because it's finally starting to work itself out. We weren't in this case for a very long time. The NL wild card was a logjam until about 2 weeks ago, and it's still competitive, but it's just not exactly where it was a few weeks ago. Now, I will say this as caveat number 2, Lindsay. If we didn't have the new playoff structure, this wouldn't even be a conversation. We wouldn't even be in this conversation because we're talking about the final wild card spot. So if you want to think this is a bad thing, well, think about what the conversation you'd have 3-4 years ago, because we'd be going in September and we'd already know every team that was going to be in the postseason. So,
well, the American League, the second and third spots are divided by half a game. So you wouldn't have the drama of the final spot in the NL, but you'd have the drama of the second spot in the AL. You'd still only have one race though, which is kind of frustrating.
Right. Yeah, good point. What I guess I'm trying to get to is it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing that we still have at least some race going on in September. Would you like to have more? Sure. But there's still plenty of things you can talk about. Who's going to win the American League East? We don't know yet. Who's going to win the American League Central? We don't know yet. And then obviously the final wild card spot. So there's still plenty of good conversations to have for the month of September when it comes to postseason baseball. And we're going to have them right here.
Yeah. For more on that NL East wildcard, the Braves and the Mets, you can go check out our other show, the Braves Today podcast. We're going to be breaking down Atlanta's loss to Colorado and what that means going forward for the wildcard chase. Okay, so I want to hop into quick pitch real quick. I've got a couple of things I want to get to. I teased this yesterday. I said next time we have a day where we don't have a giant slate of games, we can do this. Only had 9 games yesterday. The number one prospect in baseball, we talked about it yesterday, Junior Caminero of the Tampa Bay Rays is your new number one prospect in baseball, according to Baseball America. But if you weren't, if it wasn't for, correction, let me back up. When he graduates, because he could graduate by the end of this season or very early next season, who is the new number one prospect in baseball? I'm going to go first because I'm pretty sure I took your guy, but I'm going to go with Boston Red Sox outfielder Roman Anthony. It's just something he has been, AA, Portland, went to AAA. He's looked, he has questions, right? He's not a finished product. And I feel like a lot of our number one prospects have been close to finished products. But Roman Anthony, to me, with the exception of, missing breaking balls in the zone and a little bit of ground ball issues early in the year, he's been a guy, he's got the size, he's got the strength to be a power hitter. He has the defensive chops where he can stick in center field if you need him to. He's probably going to end up going to right. It's an above average arm, but he can play center. I think of it kind of like a guy like Aaron Judge. He can play center. It's fine, but he's probably really supposed to be a right fielder. And his speed has been surprising as well. I thought he was going to be average, maybe a little bit below average. I think he's average to above average. He's had times home to first, close to 4 seconds. And I can see him as a guy that when he gets a chance in Boston, and that's going to be a question because you've got so many outfielders in Boston. When he gets a chance in Boston, he can be a batting third, batting fifth, somewhere in the heart of that order. He can give you speed and some stolen bases. He's a good base runner, although the speed's not amazing. But he can drive in runs. He can hit home runs. He can hold his own defensively. I wouldn't call it a true five-tool talent because I feel like he's going to have a little bit of a batting average issue when he first starts. But I've been really impressed. Max exit velos hitting 110, things like that. Really excited about what Roman Anthony can potentially do going forward.
Yeah, I am in agreement with you. I do think Roman Anthony would be the next step up there. I think that he would fit the number one prospect role quite well. And I agree with everything you said. I can't wait to talk about the Red Sox this offseason. I think they're going to be one of the most interesting teams to talk about this offseason because of the law firm, right? The
Right.
players that went up to AAA, Anthony being
Teal,
one of
Meyer,
them.
and Anthony, yeah.
Yeah, insane, right? So I think that them competing for a spot in spring training is going to be really interesting. And I think you might see the Red Sox make some moves to make that happen, to open up a possible path for them. But I'm going to, give you a different name because I think that it just wouldn't be fair if I agreed with you. There's some good names out there, though. I think that this is not like a shoe-in number one compared to what we've had over the past couple times around with Woods and Holiday and Caminero and things like that.
That's what's hard, yeah.
Walker Jenkins, I think, can be really good. I think that Sammy Basallo eventually is going to be number one. I don't know if he'll just be the next number one. But if I had to go with somebody right now other than Roman Anthony, I'm going to go with Jackson Jobe, the right-handed pitcher from the Detroit Tigers. I think he's got front of rotation ace kind of stuff. He's been really good in Double-A this season, really good. Let me get that stat pulled up right now. 1.96 ERA over 19 games, 89 strikeouts, only a 1.04 WHIP. I mean, that's really good. First round pick, third overall in 2021. I don't really normally like to say pitching prospect should be number one because let's think about a few seasons ago. There was this kid named Andrew Painter for the Philadelphia Phillies, and he was in contention to be that number one prospect.
Yeah.
And we haven't heard anything from him since because he's been dealing with injury, right? So it's hard to say that guy should be the number one prospect when you have some other really good position players around. But Joe might be deserving of the exception, Lindsay.
Yeah, and to your note, he had a hamstring issue earlier this year. I don't think he's going to break 100 innings this year because of that hamstring issue. But I have noticed as he's gotten away from that hamstring issue, Detroit's been willing to let him go deeper into games. I feel like he's broken 100 pitches a couple times since then. So the health is coming back, but the workload overall is going to be hampered, which leads a question to when he does come up. Let's say he makes the rotation next year, and you've got Tarek Skubal, you're trying to find reinforcements for him. Can Jackson Jobe give you a full season in the majors next year? I mean, he makes 22 starts. You're looking at probably 120 to 130 innings. I'm worried about anything more than that would be maybe too much exposure. And so definitely a question, but I think you're right on so many pitching prospects. It feels like get hurt and miss time that it's hard to take one of those guys and say, yes, this guy should be the number one prospect in baseball. My dark horse, I think too, just because I've seen him play in person. I've called his games. I have a signed ball of his actually over there that he gave me. Carson Williams, the shortstop for the Tampa Bay Rays. I think he's the best defensive infielder in the minors. And you couple that with the power potential that he has. I genuinely think He'll probably struggle with average a little bit when he first comes up, but he should be able to get on base still. And as he grows into it, I think you could be looking at a Corey Seager type shortstop out of Carson Williams. But again, as probably the best defensive shortstop in baseball to go along with the power potential you can get. I think it's a nice, appealing package there.
Yeah, and he's in like the greatest system for development too, right? So that doesn't hurt.
Yeah, love what Tampa Bay can do with their guys. Okay, speaking of minor leaguers and things like that, Christian Moore, second baseman for the Los Angeles Angels, obviously drafted out of Tennessee this year. They've pushed him aggressively into Double-A. He has a left meniscus injury. The Angels PR, which credit to the Angels for actually publicly discussing a prospect injury. I feel like so many teams don't want to do that. But they said he is, they have a conservative return to play plan for him. He's going to be rehabbing this. He's not going to have surgery, but he is going to stay with the Rocket City Trash Pandas in the hopes that he can make it back before the season ends. Is that a mistake? Should they just go ahead and give him surgery? Or if he can rehab a meniscus issue without needing surgery and get back on the field, is that the better thing for a guy who we expect will probably get into the Los Angeles lineup by next season?
Yeah, he's going to get there next year because I thought there was a chance that we might have saw him this year. This is what I'm hoping is happening with, behind the scenes. I'm hoping that they're installing the mindset that you will rehab to prepare yourself to be ready to play this season, to kind of install that because you're young, you're developing. But they actually don't pull the trigger. They actually don't play him. They get him prepared for the season and they say, okay, you're great. You're ready to go. We're actually going to hold you back and we're going to get you ready for 2025. That's my hope that happens. So if they do play him again, I do think that is a mistake because there's no reason to rush him. The Angels are not competitive whatsoever. And you want to have him down the stretch in 2025 and beyond because this is a guy that could be a cornerstone player for you. We just saw what he did over just a short span, and it's a small sample size. And I know I'm making a very, big ask here, but in only 24 minor league games, 6 home runs, 16 RBIs, a 948 OPS. I mean, he was great in college as well, but there's still a lot of questions to be asked about what can Christian Moore do. I think we'll still get them answered next season to start off the regular season in the minor leagues. But I would not be surprised to see him be an early season call-up in, say, June or July next season if he's healthy.
Yeah, that honestly feels kind of slow given what the Angels have done in the past, so I can see that. Okay, looking at the schedule for this weekend, full slate of games tonight, obviously. But looking at, you kind of break things into 3 groups, right? You have one team in the game does not matter. Phillies at Marlins. Okay, great. Marlins are out of it. Does not matter. You have some games between teams who are both in the postseason, and then games between a team who is in the postseason and one who is not, but they are close. So, which of these 4 is more intriguing to you? Twins at Royals, Yankees at Cubs, Guardians at Dodgers, or Reds at Mets?
Those are some good series. I think we're in for some good baseball this weekend. I'm going to go with the team that is in the postseason and one that's just on the fringe here. I'm going to go with the Yankees against the Cubs, and here's why. The Yankees have not been looking great as of late. They have not. There's been a lot of questions. Everyone's favorite player on the Yankees that are not a part of the Yankees system is Clay Holmes right now. So I think that there's a lot of questions that need to be asked. A great way to prove everybody wrong and to get the Yankees back on the right foot is to go and win a series against a team that is working their butt off to get into the postseason. The Chicago Cubs, 7-3 in their last 10 games. They've looked really good, and they're only 4 games outside of that wild card. If they can, if they can do really good against the Yankees, get themselves even closer to that wild card, that this rest of the September is gonna be wild. However, if the Yankees could possibly put the Cubs to bed. So I think that's why it's going to be an interesting series for me to watch out.
Yeah, that series opener 2:20 Eastern on I believe it's going to be on Marquee. It's that Wrigley afternoon special. Luis Gil coming off the IL to make a start versus Jordan Wicks. That'll be interesting again. 2:20 first game of the day, only day game we get today. For me, I'm intrigued about Cleveland, LA, 2 teams in first place. But I think for me, this has got to be Minnesota at Kansas City. This is a series, these are 2 and 3 in both the Central and the AL wildcard. I'm really curious to see what happens between these teams, but also the matchup tonight, 8:10 on Apple TV Plus. Prospect Zebby Matthews for the Twins versus Cole Reagans for the Royals. So it's a great matchup on Friday night. And then obviously a series that has implications not just for both teams, but also for the Detroit Tigers, who are pushing to try to get into the postseason. Detroit is at Oakland. They send Tariq Skubal to the mound tonight. So I think that's going to be, there's a lot of repercussions out of this Twins-Royals series, especially if one of these teams can get a sweep over the other. That can really do a lot for the Tigers and their postseason push. So interesting ramifications up and down, whether it's the division and the wild card, because a sweep could potentially impact both, especially if Cleveland runs into the buzzsaw that is the Dodgers.
One cleanup thing before we go here.
Yeah.
We talked about the Tigers at the beginning of the season, or at the beginning of the episode, and as you mentioned just a minute ago, they have the second easiest schedule the rest of the way, Lindsay. Second easiest schedule. So I told you September's going to be fun.
That is going to be fun. This has been First Pitch for Friday, September 6th. If you're listening on audio, do us a favor. Leave us a 5-star review. It means a ton. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment down below. Tell your friends they can get their morning recaps of baseball from your friends over at First Pitch. Until next time, enjoy the games. And this has been First Pitch.